Hello, everyone. Everyone out there, thanks for joining us. If you wish to share one of your favorite YA books, go ahead and do it in the chat feature today. We'd like to hear what your favorite book, YA book is. I see we have someone here. It's their very first library Zoom program. And to that person out there, it's one of our first ones too. I mean, we've done this for what, 2 weeks now. So it's all new to us, all of us. So we can't do it wrong.
If you just joined us and you want to add the title of your favorite YA book in the chat, we'd love to hear what you've been reading. Ender's Game. That's an excellent, that's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the movie version of that, Mrs. P?
Yes. I remember I showed it at the library actually as a program. Yeah, it was a while ago now. It is. It is. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that's never read the book or watched the movie, but they changed a lot. So to be expected for adaptations, I guess. Have you seen the movie?
I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many YA books have turned into movies. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a real popular thing lately. Last few years. Since Harry Potter, I think, really.
Yeah. That really started it. And then Twilight.
Oh, Mrs. P, somebody's reading the Lunar Chronicles.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. No, it's a really good series. I enjoy that a lot. I really, really like fairy tale retellings of all kinds. So definitely a good one. And a little bit different too with the science fiction angle.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like this one's really innovative.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just 2 minutes before 7. So yeah, anyone else just joining us, please, if you have a favorite YA book, we'd like to hear it. Put it in the chats section.
Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be a favorite, just one you've read recently.
Sure.
Or ever. I'm glad everybody's coming out for our program tonight, or staying in, I guess, for our program tonight. The Raven Boys series by Maggie Stiefvater. Are you familiar with that one, Mrs. P?
I've actually never read it, but I read the other Maggie Stiefvater, Scorpio Races, I believe it was called. I really liked it a lot.
they water horses in that? Something?
Yes.
I haven't read that
Yes.
one. Just something with water horses.
It's definitely very different. Yeah. Like seahorsey.
All right. Well, looks like we are at 7 o'clock now, huh? Well, hello everyone out there. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited about today's program. Teen books adult readers will love. My name is Wendy and I'm the adult program coordinator. And today I have two of the library's very own young adult librarians, Clarice Pelcharski, also known as Mrs. P, or Miss, right? And also Jennifer Lowe. And she has Valentine, her little pet with her, her cat Valentine. So thank you all for joining us today. We also have Graham Dostal in the background. He's just helping us out today. So if you happen to see him, he's helping us out. And this is being also aired on Facebook Live, just to let you know. And before we begin, I just want to let you know the webinar is being recorded and it will be available on demand after the live session today. And while you can see me and the librarians here today, we are not able to see you. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. We do have a Q&A session at the end of our program. And if you think you have a question during the program, go ahead and enter it in the Q&A. We're going to answer those though at the end of the program. And we'll do our best to answer those all today. And if you have if you have any book recommendations, go ahead and let us know that, or any favorite books, you can put those in there too. And I have one more thing. I do want to ask you one question. I'm going to put a poll out. We just want to know how many people are watching. So how many people in your household? Is it just you? Are you with someone or a few people in your house? Just if you don't mind answering that, that'd be great. Because otherwise we really don't know. And one more thing, like I said, I just want to make sure that you're aware of our poll and everything and how to use the Q&A. If not, you can always raise your hand with the little raising hand icon. But now it's time for Jennifer and Clarice to start talking about YA. And tell me, what do you two read when you're not reading YA?
That's funny.
Before we answer the question, I wanted to say that in our practice, we realized that we have a lot to say about this, so it's likely that we're going to run past the 30 minutes that the program was advertised for.
Oh,
so
okay.
If you need to be done at 7:30, you, the viewer, no, our feelings won't be hurt. We understand you made plans. It's fine. But if you want to stick with us to the end, we'd love to have you, and we're hoping to do some personalized book recommendations at the end for you. So hopefully you can stick around. But Clarice, you started answering the
I saw on the chat. Oh, well, I just wanted to comment. Someone in the chat said they like Carry On too, which is like my favorite book ever. And you too.
That's great.
We're both huge Rainbow Rowell fans, so.
Yes.
But yes. Well, yeah, when I'm not reading YA, I was an English major. I used to read like a lot of like more heavy literary things. I no longer do. So when I'm not reading things for work, I feel like I read a lot of really fluffy things, like books for adults that are about baking, people like opening up cupcake shops and falling in love, like that kind of thing. I do read a lot of fantasy and realistic fiction, and they do tend to be romances. And I do prefer romances to be funny rather than dramatic. And that's just pretty much true across the board. But yeah.
Oh, very nice. What about you, Jennifer?
When I'm not reading YA, I love to read a good murder mystery.
You're not reading?
So just reading. I just like to read the murder mysteries, not participating. But yes, when I'm not reading YA, I like to read a good murder mystery. My favorite are historical fiction or historical mysteries. And I also like historical romances, like Clarice does. So, and I do prefer a funnier romance. I think I realized recently that one of the reasons I liked the historical romances is that there's more reason behind all the machinations, all the reasons they can't get together. Whereas when I read a modern romance, I think you guys are just being dumb. You need to get your acts together. Come on. So Just
That's
it helps
true.
me buy into
Thought
the
about it
story
that
a
way.
little bit
Yeah.
more.
Mm-hmm.
And why YA, young adults? Why young adult books?
Well, I mean, I guess sometimes people have this idea that because they're intended for teens that they wouldn't be interested in those books, but that's definitely not true. And the market's really shifted. So people are reading young adult. As we were talking about before, a lot of films have been adapted from YA books in recent years. And I think a lot of it has to do with how YA books are written. They're designed to be gripping and entertaining like right away, because if you don't capture a teen's attention right away, you're just going to lose them. So, and I think in that way, they also lend themselves well to being adapted for films, which are of course like shorter. So, I mean, they're just good books. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think
What do you,
a
what
lot
would you
of
recommend
YA
for
books are
an
about
adult who's
feelings,
reluctant?
which
Yeah.
can be a big turnoff for
Oh.
some. My internet connection is unstable,
Okay.
apparently.
Sorry.
Okay.
Experiencing a little lag. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone okay? Yeah.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I can hear
I just
you
saw
guys,
it frozen
I think,
screen, but
nobody's
sorry about
really on
that,
the screen.
viewers.
No, that's fine. You were asking if we would recommend a certain book.
Yeah, for anyone who's reluctant to read YA, you know, what's a good way to start and a good book?
I think that I would say if there's a certain genre that you like to read in adult books, that there is a corresponding genre in YA books. So YA isn't a genre. It's an age group, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. But there are, so if you like science fiction adult books, we have science fiction YA books. The only thing we really lack in YA, we don't have a lot of Westerns. So if you're like a big Zane Grey fan, I'm sorry, we're not. There's like one or two. We can't really help you out.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah, there are a
you
couple,
start
that's
with, if you like science fiction, we have a couple, but there's not a lot of Westerns. If you like science fiction, if you like romance, you like mysteries, then there's something to correspond, and I would start there. Clarice and I are both also big fans of middle grade fiction, which is the next age group down. So if you're kind of interested in a lighter read, but you don't want to read about feelings so much, I would try a middle grade book. I think that might be more your speed. There's a lot of really, really great middle grade fiction out there.
Yes, especially mysteries. Yes. Really good middle grade mysteries. And yes, no, because the characters are at oldest 12 usually in a middle grade book, and so they haven't hit their angsty phase yet, so it isn't a big focus usually.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And is there anything you'd recommend people read, you know, during this time, during the quarantine?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it depends on if you want to kind of distract from the current situation or if you want to lean into the current situation. So, do you want to?
Yeah, everyone.
One of those
picking up a dystopian like. Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So, personally, I would tend toward the more comfort. A dystopian, you mean?
Oh no,
Sorry.
the distractions, the comfort.
Oh yeah. Well, if I was recommending something I personally would pick something that's a little bit on the fluffier side. So things that are like a contemporary romance, like Sandhya Menon comes to mind with her book series, starting with When Dimple Met Rishi, just kind of like a lighter romance. And the third book from the series actually is coming out later this year. If you wanted to read a mystery also, which wouldn't yeah, I just would, if you're trying to distract yourself, I would say away from anything like dystopian. I would, so something like, let's see, I have Sadie by Courtney Summers, which is a really cool mystery. It's, if you don't like fluffy, but you still want to be distracted, it's a little bit different. It's kind of gritty for a YA mystery, I must say, but the format's kind of interesting. It alternates between what it's written as like a podcast, like a true crime podcast, and then also between the perspective of a girl that whose younger sister was murdered and she disappears because she tries to figure out what happened to her. So the podcast attempts to find out what happened to that girl that went missing. So it's really gritty. I'll put it out there right now. But it definitely takes you away from the current situation because it's obviously something that wouldn't be happening right now, actually.
Right. No, that's good right now, though. Yeah, I agree.
I want to put in a plug for the audio version of that book because they actually recorded the podcast. So it's multiple actors, and it's really cool. Some teens that I know read it or listened to it rather, and they got really into it. They really enjoyed it, which
that's
is
a really good idea.
Audio book. If you wanted to lean in to the current situation and really read something, then I would, my first recommendation is the Scythe series, which is amazing, but it isn't exactly about like disease or anything, but it's very timely. Yeah, it's very timely, but it's excellent. So if you're not ready to like lean in to this series right now, put it on your to read list for later. It's amazing, and I don't really know very many. I know a lot of people who read it, and I haven't heard of very many people saying they didn't like it.
Oh, great.
My other recommendation would be The Wilder Girls by Rory Power, which is about girls at a boarding school on an island who and a mysterious disease hits the island, so they all have to be quarantined on the island. So very, very similar in that way.
I would say another Neil Shusterman book, Dry, also, I think hits on a lot of the things we're seeing now. I mean, in a very different situation. In that case, it's this idea that for some reason the water supply gets cut off and no one has access to fresh water. And then what happens in that situation, how quickly people can change when they no longer have access to a basic need.
And going off of Clarice's earlier recommendation for Sadie, if you've already read that and wanted something with kind of a similar feel, I am in the middle of this one, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
Ooh.
And I have to read it in little pieces. It's really making me anxious, but it's super good. And it's about a girl who's doing a senior project in her high school, investigating a murder that occurred 5 years ago in her town. So it's good. It's really good. If you like those true crime podcasts, I think Sadie and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder would be excellent choices.
And I know you said, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Oh no, I was just gonna comment. Somebody in the chat said they hate Westerns, so they're glad that we don't have them in YA.
Oh, yeah, there aren't that many.
I'm glad we're meeting someone's need by not having any Westerns.
There you go. Now the YA books, I know you said there's a lot of audio out there. Do we have a lot of ebooks for the YA books as well? We do, right? At the library, so.
We do, either through Overdrive or Hoopla, mostly Overdrive, you can find some. And if there's anything we don't have and you want to send in a request, we do take those as well. But yeah, many of them should be available.
Hoopla has a fair number of audiobooks for teens as well.
Yeah.
And are there any books coming out later this year that, you're both really excited about? Or
let me see.
That we might want to know and place a hold on it.
Yeah, well, actually, in a few days, that prequel to the Hunger Games is coming out.
Yes, it is.
Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is it's interesting. It takes place, what is it, like 50 years before the events of the Hunger Games, something like that. And it's childhood of President Snow, or his origin story, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That does sound good.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like that actually leads into this other idea that there's a trend toward having origin stories about villains, actually. And I'm seeing that a lot in YA literature.
Yes, definitely. They can't just be a bad guy. They have to be a bad guy for a reason. And sometimes I don't like that because then I feel bad for them. And, you know,
Yes.
like,
yes.
like Voldemort had kind of a rough childhood, it turns out. So not that it excuses him from everything, but you feel a little bad for him. A little. Maybe.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, we have a lot of comments in our chat area. So, I mean, there's a lot to go through.
Oh yeah, no, dystopias.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's really staying strong. We are seeing a lot more realistic fiction coming out, but the dystopia trend seems to be sticking around for quite a while.
So yeah, one of our participants said they have to give a dystopia series a chance. Never thought it was an area they would like, and just learned the word. So so they'll have to try some of those you just mentioned. And
no, definitely, it kind of blurs into the lines of science fiction. Many of them are science fiction, so I think a lot of people might classify the Hunger Games or something as science fiction and not realize that it's kind of both. It could be dystopia also.
Yeah.
It's more dystopian.
Yeah. Or like
I always thought of it as dystopian.
The Giver is technically a dystopian book, although you don't really it's a little bit older, so you don't really think of it.
Right. Before people started using that word pretty more commonly. And then even before that, we're talking about like Brave New World in 1984. But Divergent is also a good one in the dystopian genre. There were a lot that came out all around the same time, like Matched, the Selection series. And then they kind of fell off a little bit, but they're starting to come back. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see a little more now too.
Yeah, although I think sometimes you get like Wilder Girls, which kind of falls into that category, but it's more of a Lord of the Flies kind of a situation, which is a little different from a future society where things have gone wrong.
No, that's true.
Wendy, you asked about if there were any books coming out later this year that we were excited about. I know that Clarice read this book, American Royals, and it's like a retelling of American history, so that America has a royal family instead of presidents. And there's a sequel coming out for this later this year, so that's pretty exciting.
Yes, it's if George Washington was made into a king instead of a president.
Interesting concept.
Seeing what happened like 300 years later.
What kind of a reader would be interested in this? Like, do you have a comparison for this book?
Well, I guess if anyone's interested in anything involving like the actual royal families, they might be interested in that. If a read-alike for another YA series would be The Selection, which I just mentioned by Kira Cass, which is the same sort of royalty, but in the modern era. But it's kind of like, it's modern, but also not. It's like a lot of the other traditions were preserved along the way is kind of how it feels.
Interesting. Yeah. I see someone in the chat asked us about YA historical fiction.
Yes.
So one of my favorite historical fiction authors in YA is named Monica Hesse. I guess it's Hesse.
Hesse.
Hesse. Yeah. So she is the first book she wrote that I really loved was The Girl in the Blue Coat, and it's a little bit of a mystery during World War II. It takes place, I believe, in Denmark, and it's a girl who's just trying to get through the war as best she can, and then she ends up looking for another girl who's missing. And it was really, really well done. It was really well written, and she's since written 2 more books. Her most recent book just came out in April, and it's called Either They All Went Left or They Both Went Left. And again, it's a World War II story. Actually, all 3 of her books have been World War II books. And it's a girl who was in the concentration camp, and when her family got there, they were separated out, and 2 of her family members went left and she went right. And so now that's the last time she ever saw them. So she's wants to know what became of them and see if she can find them now that the war is over.
Oh, so I like the historical fiction, so I'd be interested in reading that.
Another author that's really popular in that genre is Ruta Sepetys, and she writes about a ton of different historical
Yes.
periods and places. Her most recent book, oh man, I can tell you the whole plot.
Fountains of Silence?
Thank you. So it's about this period of history in Spain when couples who, during the fascist regime, and couples who did not really meet with the fascist ideals, if they had a baby, they were told that their baby had died during birth, but actually the baby was stolen and adopted away to a good fascist family. So the book takes place now and in flashbacks, kind of somebody now uncovering this story, but it's based on real things that happened.
And people are still, just starting to piece together what happened to them, because a lot of those, many of them didn't know that they had been adopted.
Right. It was all a big secret that nobody knew about. So a lot of her books are really, her first book was actually called Shades of Grey, and it led to a lot of
Shades of Grey,
Between Shades of Grey, and she had a lot of people show up to her like book selling events looking for a different author and a different type of book.
But we're pleasantly surprised, is what I always hear.
Yes, people were really excited actually after they heard what her book was about. So they're a little bit more intense historical fiction, but if historical fiction's your jam, I think Ruta Sepetys and Monica Hess are a good start. Thanks for asking.
These are all great suggestions. Now I know someone's wondering in our little chat if we're going to have a book recommendation list somehow that they can access.
Yes, we'll have one emailed out to all the attendees and absentees in a couple of days. It'll include some recommendations that we picked out beforehand, and then any of the books that we mentioned here tonight.
Excellent. All right. And are there any YA books that you've read that have surprised you in any way? I know that's kind of a tough question, but
yeah, I actually have two.
Okay.
The first is The Crossover by Kwame Alexander, which is just barely YA. It's almost a middle grade book, but it is about two 13-year-old boys. They're twins who play basketball. So I am not athletically inclined. I'm not really interested in reading about sports. I don't really relate a lot to 13-year-old boys. I was not ever one, so sometimes their emotions elude me. And then it was also written in verse, which is not always my favorite thing in a book. And so I went into this, I had to read it because it was nominated for an award, and I was grumpy, and I loved it. It was amazing and phenomenal. And then my other one was actually Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, because I didn't know what to expect. All of her books before that were sort of rom-coms that take place in the real world. And then she wrote this kind of fantasy book it's like the seventh book of Harry Potter, but without the first six. It's kind of hard to explain. And so I thought, I don't know, this is a little high concept, it's a little weird, but oh my gosh, I couldn't return that book to the library for several days after I read it, because I just had to keep
I'm just gonna read the end a couple more times.
Yeah,
I just didn't want it to end. Those are the best.
No.
So good.
I have not read the sequel, Wayward Son, yet because I'm nervous.
Me too.
Stakes are high.
I don't know, a book that surprised me. Actually, when I was still in library school, I read Leviathan by Scott Westerfeld, and I didn't know what to expect. And again, I think some people might think that's borderline middle grade. It's kind of right on the edge because of the age of the characters. But the description sounded bonkers, so I really didn't know what to expect. It's reimagined World War I. It's steampunk, and it's like if England had machinery that was actually Darwinist, which means that like the machines are actually animals that they've engineered to be like big zeppelins. I know, it's so bizarre. And the other powers were using like just mechs basically. So that's the steampunk element. And it shouldn't be good based on that description, but it really is. I really I read like the whole series when I should have been reading other things because I was in school at the time. But I highly recommend it to anyone that kind of wants kind of an epic journey story. It has two main characters. One is a boy, one is a girl. I don't want to give away too much about what happens, but there are some actual historical events that are incorporated. So that it's, again, it's historical fiction if you like that, but it also is very surprising because he takes into a direction you wouldn't expect. It's also an illustrated novel, which is kind of interesting because you think, like, why would it be illustrated? Is that really going to add anything to it? But it really does, because a lot of the things he's describing are like machinery and things. I'm like, I don't even know what he's picturing. What is that going to look like? And the illustrations are really detailed and really bring that to life. So it was very unexpected. It definitely wasn't a book I would have picked up by myself. So.
Oh, that sounds great.
In the chat, somebody is asking about Marie Lu's new book, and I think that's actually a reference to the historical fiction. Oh. It's a book about Mozart's sister.
Yes.
And imagining that I don't know if they're imagining this part might be true, but that she is just as much of a musical genius as her brother, but her father wants her to set it aside because she's a girl and she needs to go and get married. And then I think there's some fantasy elements in it.
I think there are too, yeah.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
What is the title? It's something back.
It is something back.
All right, I'm gonna look it up.
We also got another question about graphic novel recommendations.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So actually there's a Leviathan, isn't there, I think, a Leviathan graphic novel coming out?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Also Scott Westerfeld's first series, The Specials, another dystopian series, which a lot of people love if you wanted to try a dystopian. In terms of graphic novels, I do have some that I like. This is not my strongest area of expertise. I cannot recommend any manga to you, really. So if you're looking for manga, we can email you later with some recommendations, but right now, not so much. Rainbow Rowell actually also has a graphic novel, Pumpkinheads, that she did with
Faith Erin Hicks.
And it's super cute. It's perfect for the fall. It's about these two high school kids that work on a pumpkin patch carnival thing. It's amazing.
Which we found out is based on a real place.
I know. I want to go.
Sounds amazing.
Once we can go out again.
Yes, the Kingdom of Back.
Road trip to Nebraska.
Yeah.
I also have loved the Lumberjanes series, which I think is a lot of fun. And it's about girls at a summer camp for, oh gosh, it has a tagline, something for strong ladies or something. I haven't read one in a long time, but it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of like mythology and fantasy in there. A lot of strong female characters if you are looking for that. I would also recommend Giant Days. This is about 3 girls in college in England, and I think as adults, I think we find it a lot of fun. I don't actually know how, like if I were 14, how much I'd get out of it, but as an adult who's been away to college, there was a lot for me to relate to. I recognized, like, oh, you're that person at college, and oh, I remember you. Yeah. So I thought those would be my top. Oh, and then there's a bunch of graphic novel memoirs, which I just made a video about for the library, and you can watch on our YouTube channel anytime. But George Takei has one called They Called Us Enemy. Congressman John Lewis has a 3-part series called March, and Robin Ha, who's an artist, came out with one called Almost American Girl. That one was pretty amazing because her mom, she had a single mom. When she was 14, they came on a vacation from Korea to Alabama, except it was supposed to be a vacation, and then surprise, they're moving here. So Robin had left all of her things back in Korea. She has nothing. She doesn't speak any English, and she doesn't know anyone in Alabama. Well, she does. She knows her cousin, who refuses to speak to her when they're at school and is very mean to her. So it was a really inspiring story about overcoming difficulty and how much art played a part in her life. So that was really pretty cool. And Jared Krasaska, I found out is how you pronounce his name. He writes the Lunch Lady graphic novels for readers, and he wrote Hey Kiddo,
the other one.
Yes, which is about his time growing up. his mom was a drug addict, and so he was raised by his grandparents who weren't they weren't super thrilled to be back to raising children. They thought they were done with that. So he had a tough life, and again, art really saved him. So
Cool. A lot of great titles. Who happens to be your favorite YA author? Do you have a favorite YA author?
Well, I think it's pretty clear we both like Rainbow Rowell at this point, but
yeah,
we might have a couple others. I really like Nicola Yoon, who also writes realistic fiction, like Rainbow Rowell, except for Carry On, right? And then actually her husband also wrote a book for YA, Frankly in Love, which I have not read yet, but
he has another book coming out soon too. That's another book.
Is that in the same, it's a series? Is that right? Or is it a companion or something?
I'm not sure. He has an adult book coming out as well.
Oh.
It was, I think, super sad love song, because I was at a like webinar and he was there and he announced the title and I thought it was Super Sad Love Slug. Right. So now I'm really disappointed every time I hear that it's not about a slug. It's
not as interesting. Yeah.
I have Frankly in Love here somewhere. I have a big pile of books like surrounding me. I can't move. Here it is. Also, can I say that both Nicola and David have the most amazing book covers. They just do. I actually have The Sun Is Also a Star here as well. And this cover, here it is.
And that book is why she's one of my favorite authors. It's so good.
This is string art, and you can actually watch a video of them making this cover, which is worth watching all in its own if you don't want to read the book. But I'm trying to think. I really like Julie Murphy, who also writes some realistic fiction. Mrs. P, you really liked the Selection series too.
I did, yeah. It's fun. So I would put that in I made a little category, my notes to myself, of girls in pretty dresses books, and that's definitely on the top of that list. As odd as it sounds, the best way I can describe it is a cross between The Hunger Games and The Bachelor. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, it's not. It's pretty fun. It's a fun series. It probably went on for a little long. There's a lot of books in the series now, but
I think it's still going on, right? There's a new
new one I think is unrelated. The Betrothed, right? Or something, the Betrothal or something. I also thought that was related, but it's not. I'm also a really big fan of Leigh Bardugo, who writes fantasy books, dark fantasy books for teens. She started with a trilogy. It started with Shadow and Bone, and she created a universe called the Grishaverse, and Grishas are they're kind of witches or sorcerers, I guess is the best way to describe them. And she's since extended into 2 duologies, and they're outstanding. They're like I said, they're really dark, but her world building is like really good. And she's just the type of person that will like make a cast of characters, and it doesn't matter how minor they are, you just care about all of them by the end.
She also has a book out for adults recently.
Yes, the Night House. Yeah, it sounds very different from her.
It is. I actually have it, and I'm also in the middle of reading that, and it's about like secret societies at Yale, and how they're actually really into the occult. So it's pretty graphic. So just if blood and guts are not your thing, I would give that one a miss for sure. It's pretty.
That's probably why she decided not to make that one a YA book, or a little too.
Yeah, because the character's pretty young in the book actually, and she's of an age that a lot of we actually see a lot of YA books with the same characters of that age. So I think it is that it's pretty graphic in terms of the blood and guts and gore depicted on page.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Oh no, go right ahead.
I had a more extended answer for my favorite YA author. So for classic YA, I would say Diana Wynne Jones and Tamara Pierce, who wrote actually Tamara Pierce still writes, but Diana Wynne Jones passed away a few years ago. But they write fantasy books. So Diana Wynne Jones wrote Howl's Moving Castle, which some of you might know was adapted into a Miyazaki film. But and Tamara Pierce also writes fantasy books, but they both wrote like really strong female characters in a time when that was kind of rare, especially in the fantasy genre. So it was, and also actually we're writing in a time when there wasn't that much that you could call YA literature, honestly. So they were kind of my favorites when I was growing up. But,
I want to give a plug for investigating the backlist, which is what we call not new books. So there are a lot of new, really good YA books, but I know right now we're all depending on Overdrive to read our books, and so the hot new books are hard to get. Jump into some older books. The waiting list is going to be shorter or non-existent. One series that I have loved is by Susan Cooper, and it is
the first one is Oversea Under Stone.
It is Oversea Under Stone. The second book in the series won the Newbery Award, and is the title of the whole series. And it'll come back to me later. There's also a book in the series called The Green Witch and The Gray King, and of course I can't remember the name of the series.
Just the one book.
It's the one that tells you the name of the series, but it's by Susan Cooper. And if you like Harry Potter, I think you'd really like this. And the audiobooks are excellent and make a good family.
Yes.
Dark is Rising. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
Dark is Rising. Yes. And they the audiobooks are excellent. I actually missed an exit on the freeway twice because we were listening to this book in the car, and I was like, in my head, I was in Cornwall in England battling the dark side, and then I was on the Bishop Ford and not on the Skyway. So
actually, that's funny. That makes me think of, I used to take the train to the library because I used to live in the city, and I only overshot the stop once, and it's because I was reading Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo.
That is a good recommendation.
I know.
Remember that one, yeah.
I looked up and I was in Hickory Creek. I was like, nope, this is not my stop. I'm gonna go back.
Oh well, things happen.
Yeah. And do you two see any current trends in YA right now?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on one that's kind of like a smaller trend about backstories for villains. There are a couple of books that come to mind. There's Sea Witch by Sarah Henning that talks about like the villain in The Little Mermaid. So kind of her backstory and how she came to be.
Ursula.
Yeah. So
it's actually not just a single book. There's a sequel to that as well.
Right. I know. There's a lot to say about her.
I guess so. There's a lot going on with Ursula.
My personal favorite in that, I will call it a subgenre, is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. That is it's a backstory of the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. And I will say that's one thing that really, I really felt bad for the Queen of Hearts when I was reading that book.
Yes,
it really makes you care about her so much, more than Alice. And you're just,
changed your perspective. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know, other trends?
I'm trying to think. We are seeing still a lot of dystopian books. That's holding on, but realistic fiction, I think we're seeing a lot more diversity is the big trend. Diversity in terms of both the authors and the characters depicted. Definitely. And not just diversity in terms of like racial or ethnic background, although there is a lot of that. There's a lot of diversity for like sex identity, gender identity. Neurodiversity is a big one. Okay. So it's really great. I think YA is actually doing an amazing job. Yes. Not that there isn't work to be done still, but doing an amazing job of bringing forward a lot more diverse authors and diverse characters. And it's really, in fact, The Sun is Also a Star, which we were talking about, by Nicola Yoon. There's two main characters, and am I right? She's Jamaican and he's Korean. Is that right?
Korean American, yeah. Okay.
And that's based on the author and her husband. So that's really cool.
That is.
Yeah, so that's, diversity is we've definitely seen more of that. Even in the time I worked at the library, so I've been at the library for 7 years now. It used to be difficult to fill some displays and really flesh them out so that they were a little bit more had more representation. But it's a lot easier to do that now, which is really, really
and
wonderful.
Size diversity is a big issue in YA books.
True.
The characters are not all just skinny blonde girls. There is nothing wrong with being a skinny blonde girl, but not everybody is a skinny blonde girl.
Yes.
The book covers are taking a little bit longer to catch up sometimes.
They are. Sometimes the covers don't actually match the contents of the book, which is very, if I was the author, I'd be really unhappy. Yeah.
I think they are often.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. We're seeing a lot of like, not exactly reboots of series, but I feel like a lot of sequels or prequels that are several years after the original series wrapped up. So, I mean, you can be very, you know, you can just call that like, well, they just want more money, right? Because it was so successful and there's still money to be had.
Right.
But
so interesting to me, like we were talking about the Hunger Games one, or Ransom Riggs came out with a new book in the Miss Peregrine series.
yes,
a few
which
months
is
ago.
now what, the sixth one? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting in terms of being an adult, that's not that long. In terms of being a teenager,
Yes.
Hunger Games came out 10 years ago. The people who were teens then are adults now. They're out of college. So that's a long, long time in the world of YA. So it's interesting that they're choosing to do this. I think it's marketed more towards adult readers.
Absolutely.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I mean, Hunger Games has had a lot of staying power. It certainly stayed around, but still, even so.
Even Marie Lou's Legends. It was what was a trilogy, but now there's a fourth book. So
and the book that really started it all, Twilight.
Yes.
The Midnight Sun book, which is a retelling of Twilight from Edward's perspective. We were supposed to get this like
years
ago.
Yes, but it got leaked.
Yes, so they just announced it's coming out now. I haven't heard anybody clamoring for this, but maybe I'm sure somebody's excited. I don't mean to sound negative.
I'm sure
teens are not reading Twilight as much these days.
They're not. So I think it'll be interesting to see who that appeals to and who's still going to be reading that.
Yeah, and maybe it will cause a resurgence. Maybe people will rediscover their love. Somebody in the chat let us know that it's The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu.
Yes.
So,
no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done with my questions. That's why I was trying to look through the chat now. There's one here that's thanks to your displays, I've branched out in YA because you introduced me to the Maze Runner. This led me to other YA books, but after this discussion, I will read a lot more.
Yes, that's a great dystopian right there.
It is. I found those a hard read. They're very serious books. There's no moments of levity in them.
Right.
I like a little levity, but people really love those books. I know.
Yes.
They're very popular with teens.
Yeah. So people are busy writing things in the chat. So I don't know if anyone has any more questions or anything. I don't see in the Q&A.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else coming out in YA. We were discussing Melissa Albert's book. What is the name of her? I can
Hazelwood. The Hazelwood.
The Hazelwood.
Yes.
This sequel, The Night Country, just came out the beginning of the year, and they just announced that there'll be a third book. So if you haven't read The Hazelwood, it's kind of hard to describe. It's about it's about this woman who became famous for writing this series of fairy tales.
Yes.
That were like much darker and very innovative and different from the usual kind of fairy tales. And the book is actually about her granddaughter. Who the daughter of the writer, so the mother of the granddaughter, cut off all contact with her mother. And so the girl's never actually met her grandmother. And she's trying to her grandmother has died, and she's trying to get back to the estate for some reason. And then finds out that maybe she didn't make up the stories in the fairy tale. But the new book that's coming out is the fairy tales that she actually wrote. or that she was supposed to have written in the book. So it's like the book the first woman would have written.
Yeah.
That was a terrible explanation. I'm sorry.
No.
I have another question, and it's a great question. You mentioned YA books being produced as movies. Do you have a YA book you enjoyed that was also made into a movie / TV show you may have enjoyed? Do you have?
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
so-
I spend a lot more time reading than I do watching very much of anything.
Let me
So
think.
I can tell you
I'm
a
so
lot of
picky with adaptations that I feel like I tend toward the negative often when I'm talking about them. We were talking about the Ender's Game earlier. But this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm a really big Harry Potter fan. Some of you might already know that. But a lot of people did not like the third Harry Potter movie because they felt that it departed too much from the original source material. I happen to think it was the best one because it did that. And it was the one that actually seemed like a real film. And because my problem with the Harry Potter movies is that I know a lot of people enjoy them that haven't read the books, but I feel like there's no way you wouldn't. Oh, good. I love the third Harry Potter. Thank you. Yes. It was directed by Alfonso Cuarón too, who is amazing. So that doesn't help.
He was recently nominated for an Oscar, right?
Exactly. He's so good. Yeah. And yes, it's the one that I think really seemed like a real film by itself and really took the characters and developed them in a way that I didn't try and be the book in a way that didn't make sense like the other ones. I feel like, yeah.
I will say my dad has never been a big reader my whole life. He loved the Ender's Game movie, loved it, and loved all 8 of the Harry Potter movies.
Okay, good.
Thoroughly enjoyed them. He also enjoyed the Percy Jackson movies, which I understand is an unpopular opinion as well. So I know a lot of people liked the Dumplin movie that was on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I think it changed some things from the book, but I think it captured the spirit of the book pretty well. And sometimes, I do wish they would do more long form TV shows like a Game of Thrones kind of multi-season thing where they take it seriously rather than trying to cram something in to a movie when it's just not going to fit.
That's the problem with most adaptations, I think. Yeah, exactly. That needs to be a series.
TV. If you know someone who can make TV series,
that one, yeah,
that'd be the one, right?
No, that'd be so good.
Yeah, nice long series. There's a lot in here.
Yes. I will say this is a middle grade series, so but I really, really like the Netflix adaptation of A Series of Unfortunate Events. And that's an example of like trying making it long form instead, really working. And it was really well done. Really well done.
Somebody mentioned that they're making a Percy Jackson show on Disney Plus. I did hear that earlier today.
Yes, it's very exciting.
I know Percy Jackson fans are super excited about that. They're very hopeful with Rick Riordan's involvement that the series will actually be worthwhile. I think that's a big thing. Like the people who are involved, what attitude they go into it with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I think like Reese Witherspoon but she doesn't do YA really, but she does a lot of adult books, but she's a reader. So I think her adaptations tend to capture the spirit of the book, even if you can't include every little moment of the book. And that's really what I'm looking for in my adaptation is, did you get the spirit of it across, or not?
Yes.
One series that we haven't talked about that I loved was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is a mystery series for teens. There's just 3 books, actually. It's a trilogy. I think that would make a great adaptation. It's like 2 plots going, one in modern day and one a flashback trying to solve a cold case that happened in the 1930s. And I think you could do a lot of fun costumes and stuff in the old time. And then cool stuff now.
And it takes place in a boarding school, which is like one of my favorite things ever.
I know. It's pretty. This boarding school sounds amazing, and
yes, it does.
That I can't go there.
I'm like, I want that to be a real place, and I want to go there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that's such a good series.
Yeah. And we have another question. What's your favorite Rainbow Rowell book? I stumbled onto Park and Eleanor and didn't love it. Why should I try a different one from here?
Huh. Wow.
So Eleanor and Park is different from the other books because it's not as funny as her other 3 books. I actually like her adult books better, and I would recommend Landline. I really enjoyed Landline. I will say we, the youth services librarians at the library, have our own book group where we meet every so often and we discuss a book. And we read Landline for that, and Clarice and I both loved it. But there is one small element of magic in the book, and that was a deal breaker for some of our coworkers. They just could not buy the storyline. Attachments, I really liked, but I thought I wouldn't because it has kind of a creepy plot.
You can't get past the squickiness of that. But
I really liked it. I also it takes place in the year 2000 and the plot, or 1999 actually, and the plot centers around around, and they're like introducing new software, and email is really new, and Y2K is a big plot point. And I thought, oh, teenagers aren't gonna understand this because they don't remember any of this. And one of our teens at the library is a huge Rainbow Rowell fan, and Attachments is his favorite book. So
it was her debut, right?
It was. They published it. It didn't really go anywhere, and then she published
Eleanor and Park,
Fangirl, Landline, and then they reissued Attachments. So, and then she's been carrying on since then. So we don't have to spend the whole night talking about Rainbow Rowell.
We don't, actually.
But she's really fun, and I wish she'd write more. And she's got amazing hair. I really like her hair.
Wow. All these books sound amazing, though. So I can't wait for that book recommendation list you guys are putting together.
Yeah, I'm going to comb through this recording and write down all the books we talked about.
There's so much to cover.
Need more books, like you're looking for book recommendations, I hope you know that that's what librarians do.
Oh, yeah.
So you can always contact the library. When we're open, you can come in or call us. But we also have a ton of YA bibliographies on our website. Teresa and I worked on them together, and then she put them on our website. So those are some really good recommendations.
Yes, and they're usually by genre or...
All right. Oh, great. Yeah, because I was going to ask you that besides the library, where can I find recommendations? So
that would be my first recommendation. I would also recommend some award lists. So ALA, the American Library Association, does a bunch of book awards, and they do a few for teens. The Prince Award is like the Newbery Award, but for older readers. That's a great place to find some good books.
Yes, and I'll be something probably a little more literary.
Like Size.
Yes.
Prince
Award. Was that an honor book, or did it win?
It won.
It did.
No, honor. It does say honor.
What won? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just like outraged.
It's always something you've never heard of, and you're like, you know, like with the Oscars, you go back and you're like, what? That movie won, and you're looking at like 5 also nominated movies that were amazing, and you never heard of the winner. That's probably what happened.
It happens. It happens.
So true.
So the Prince Award, I would also recommend the Morris Award, which is for debut authors. And then the Alex Award is actually, it's adult books with teen appeal. But I have found some really phenomenal books on there.
There are some really, the Wayward Children series. Yes. Every Hearted Doorway. Yes, it's really cool. The premise, and they're actually really short books. It's a series, but each book's like under 200 pages, probably like 150. But the premise is that there is, again, a boarding school, but it's for basically children that traveled to another world. So think like Chronicles of Narnia, but then came back and weren't allowed back into the world. And they've had this experience where they lived in this alternate reality, but because of circumstances are forced to come back to their original reality. And just like, what is it like when you have to go back and you feel like now you're lost? And so all these children are wayward children that end up at this home where they can kind of commiserate, and all of them really want to go back to the reality that they were able to go to before. But it's a really good series. It's still happening.
The first one turned out to be a little bit of a mystery also.
Yes. Oh yeah, it was.
One author I discovered through the Alex Awards is Kate Rakulia. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. I'm sorry. This is her second book, Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts. Her first book is called The Bellwether Rhapsody, and I loved this book so much. I'm not sure why it wasn't a YA book, because it's about two high schoolers at like a band competition in this old hotel, and all these things are going along, and they're really fun. They're full of quirky characters and just a lot of fun. So in the chat, they're telling us that Dig by A.S. King won the 2020 Press
Most
Award.
recently, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Scythe, this book Scythe did not come out in 2020, so they weren't nominated the same year. Dig looks like a phenomenal book. It looks really good. A.S. King is a really good author if you're looking for contemporary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's also literally the only book in the YA collection that has an Easter sticker on the spine. I mean, in youth services, we put holiday stickers on our books. And I didn't even know we could put Easter on the YA books. This has never come up before. We have a nice, robust Easter section of picture books for small children to check out. We have a few Christmas books in the teen section, and that's pretty much it. You know, books that, they're usually like romances that happen to take place at Christmas. And then this book came out, and I thought, well, this is a mistake. But no, it takes place at Easter. So it's all about a family reunion at Easter.
Mm-hmm. Easter book.
So it looks really good. It's been on my to-read list. There's a lot of books on my to-read list. So in addition to those 3 ALA award lists, I would also recommend 2 Illinois State award lists. One is called the Abraham Lincoln Young Readers Award, and that is, it's like the Rebecca Caudle Award for those of you who are familiar with that, but for high schoolers. So a statewide panel of librarians, both public and school media specialists, as well as actual teenagers, get together and vote on 20 books that they think are the best books, and then put out this list. So it's a really great list. 4 of the books are chosen by the teens without any adult input allowed. We can't participate in their discussion at all. They get to pick. So actually, that's really cool. Go ahead.
Some of the books that we mentioned tonight have been on the Lincoln list.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then similarly, I don't know why there are 2 of these lists. The state of Illinois also has Read for a Lifetime, which is run through the state library. Mm-hmm. They put out a list every year of 25 books, and if high schoolers read 4 of them a year, they get a certificate, and if they do it all 4 years, they get something else. I'm not sure. But they're all
overlap there. Yeah.
There's some overlap there. There's fiction and nonfiction on both lists. We didn't really touch on any nonfiction books today, but that is a new trend actually when you ask about.
Yeah, that's true.
In YA, nonfiction is a big trend. There's been a lot of really solid nonfiction books coming out for teens in the past few years, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Do you have a question or something in the chat?
Yeah, well, there's one question. I'm reading the Lunar series, but saw that In Between books came out. How do you read this? How do you read this series? Do you start 1 through 3, then go back and read the ones before?
I think there's like novellas in between, Mrs.
Oh, right. The novellas are kind of, you don't really need to read those necessarily in order to get the entire story. But if you want to, you can. Goodreads is a really good resource for that. Mm-hmm. Because it tells you, like, it'll say like book 2.5 or 1.75 or something, depending on how long it is, if you want to read them all in order. And I believe in the Lunar Chronicles, there's a collection of all of them together. Stars Above, if I'm not mistaken.
But it doesn't matter. You're saying if you read the 3 regular books first and then go back and read the novellas.
That's fine. Yeah, I think there's 5. Yeah,
that's fine.
I think that's how they were published. In fact, I think she wrote the 3 main books and then kind of went back.
It does. The main series stands alone without the novellas.
I will also say that sometimes it's hard for the library to get things like the novellas until they come out in a collection. Even for ebooks, we don't just buy like Kindle books from Amazon.
Right.
So do let us know if you're looking for something like that, but also be aware that we may have trouble getting those because it's just they don't sell them through the people we can buy from.
Yeah, for ebooks. Yeah.
Somebody asked if we have read any David Foster Wallace books. He is definitely not a YA author.
No, I have, but yes.
I have not. He is Dr. French, my husband, one of his favorite authors, so he's read all of them.
Ah,
I have not read any.
no, I spent a summer reading Infinite Jest.
And it would take you a summer.
Yeah, it took the whole summer.
Did you, Dr. French had to have like a dictionary with him
No.
while he was reading it.
I just powered through it. I didn't look.
I don't need to know what that word actually
It's fine.
means.
It's fine.
Context clues.
Context.
The context,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
I could have gotten more out of it than I did. But
People should read David Foster Wallace. I just haven't. So that's my shortcoming. I'm not trying to say people shouldn't read him.
no.
He was an excellent author from what I hear.
All right. You know what I was wondering too, with, and I see a question or a comment in the, a question, excuse me, in the chat. Could you include the names of the awards that you mentioned when you shared your book recommendations?
Yeah,
I think that'd be wonderful too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just like Illinois has those 2 state awards, other states do have awards too. I assume they have the same high standards that we do, and I'm not gonna, so you can look up other state awards too. They often break down their age groups a little differently, or do you think?
Yes.
But it's kind of fun to see when there's overlap or when things are totally different.
With the different states, yeah.
Yeah, because they'll pick something that's like, oh, we'll pick this book because it takes place in Chicago, and you'll see that a lot, and you probably won't see that in another list, but.
Yeah. One YA author we didn't mention, he actually writes middle grade and YA, Jason Reynolds.
Yes.
He is one of my favorite authors. He has written several books. He wrote The Long Way Down, is probably one of his most popular books. It's the most recent, but one. And the Track series is the other thing he's really known for, and that's borderline YA middle grade. The characters are kind of young, but the issues they're dealing with can be pretty heavy, I think.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah,
but
kind of boring.
I love Jason Reynolds, and he is currently like the young people's ambassador to books. I forget.
Yeah, some kind of title. Yeah, no.
Yeah, he's really cool, and I really his other books are The Boy in the Black Suit, All American Boy, and
As Brave as You.
As Brave as You, and Look Both Ways. That's his most recent book.
Oh, right.
Which is a lot of fun. Again, it's kind of borderline YA middle grade, and it takes place at a middle school, 7th graders, and it's 10 stories for the 10 blocks that are like where the school serves. And so it takes place in this African-American neighborhood, and each story is about a different kid, but you'll see the same kids in the stories. It reminded me a little bit of Wayside School. It's not that funny, but the way that the story would be about one main kid.
Right.
The background characters are other kids you've seen in other stories, and they keep coming in and out. So that was a fun read. Long Way Down is a really intense book, but I highly, highly recommend it. It's really, really good.
It's also written in verse.
It is written in verse, which you already know. I told you, not my favorite. I loved it anyway. I think I read that book in one sitting.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, it's very engaging. And actually, that would be a good book, like a book that surprised me. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I did think it was something I was going to have to power through. And
it was
like, oh, I'll just sit down and get this started. And, a couple hours later, resurfaced into the world. It's about a young man whose brother is shot, and he knows the rules. And the rules mean that he needs to get revenge for his brother. So he gets his brother's gun, and he's taking the elevator down to go extract this revenge. And he's visited by victims of past gun violence. And it's really, really just a powerful book, so well written, just amazing. Highly recommend. And it's on the Rebecca Caudle list this year.
It is.
The new list that just started.
Yeah, those are a good source too. I don't know, maybe you already mentioned that.
Yes.
The Caudle lists are definitely,
And that is kind of straddles the line of middle grade and YA, because it's the list is for 4th through 8th grade.
Yeah.
Okay, Blue Stem is the younger, right?
Yes,
and then
3rd
Caudle
through 5th.
are both. Okay.
Yeah, all the state award lists are a good place to find books if you're trying to branch out and read some more things. You're looking for something like a good engaging book, even if it's written for a different age group.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong with most of these books. They're really excellent. And actually, I don't know about the Blue Stem and the Monarch. I have less to do with them, but both the Caudle and the Lincoln lists have cumulative lists of all the nominees and winners on their website, so you can go back. Also, once the library is open, we physically label all of our books, so they retain that label.
Yeah.
So you can go back and see past nominees for all these books as well.
Yeah, very nice. We're already at the 1 hour mark
All
though,
right.
so I think people are, some people may be antsy to go on and do whatever else. So I don't know if
that's
anyone
fine,
else has one last question or anything or comment.
You gotta thank you.
You two
welcome.
you
Our
two
pleasure.
shared so much.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll get to talk about YA books with you again.
Always.
Right, we miss you all. Yeah.
Yes.
We do. We can't wait to get back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully before too long, we'll all be back at the library. But when we're back at the library, you can always come in and talk to us about books in the library. We're there.
Oh yeah.
That's why we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for those who don't know, there is some sort of chat feature, right, for patrons to talk to a librarian.
Yeah.
They
won't
come
be
in.
talking to us.
Specifically, yeah.
Specifically, the adult services is doing an amazing job handling that. So they can chat with them and get book recommendations from them.
Yeah. So,
but you won't be able to chat with us about YA books.
very true.
But you can ask for book recommendations through the chat service, or you can email the library.
Definitely.
And you can find those bibliographies on our website, and check out those lists that we mentioned, the award lists that we mentioned. But we're going to mail you all of this in a list. So.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks
Clarice. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Night.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that was great, you guys.
Yeah, that was great. So I just leave.
Yeah. Is there anything we want to talk about? Oh, it's still recording. I should stop the
No,
recording.
it stopped record. Well, it said it stopped recording.
Yeah. So I'll just leave.